new study has found that South African workers are highly stressed due to finances. This study found that 1 in 5 people is unable to actually function at work because of the significant increase in living costs. Researchers wanted to gain insights into the current state of employee well-being in our country. For more on this now, let's bring in Floatpays founder and CEO, Simon Ward, who joins us via our video link from Cape Town. Great to have you on the program, Simon. Thanks very much indeed for making time. And I wonder whether or not you were surprised at all by the findings of the study, given just the increasing pressure that many South Africans had expressed, or at least over the past couple of months.
Good morning, Ayanda. Not too surprised. I think it's been a growing trend over the past few years. As far back as 2018, momentum were showing us that loss of productivity owing to financial stress was affecting around 2% of our total GDP in the country. So something which has been growing and worsening as the kind of state of the economy worsens.
Yeah, so what exactly is the cause to effect here? Is it people are stressed, are not productive at work, and that leads to low finances, or the other way around, low finances causes stress and people therefore don't become productive at work?
I think it's low finances, so it's our ability to manage the money that we earn, which is then impacting on our daily lives in terms of the stress that we feel. So simple things like putting food on the table, buying electricity for the home are starting to increasingly affect the way that we live our lives, which then we're taking into the workplace in terms of how we're feeling generally about ourselves and about our abilities to manage life.
Yeah, you know, there's that saying, more money, more problems. I wonder whether or not the affected people fall in any particular socio-economic bracket, as it were. Typically, we'd want to assume that this affects low-income earners, but we know that sometimes, given your liabilities, your problems, even those who earn a bit more tend to get financial stress.
Yeah, so what this study showed us, definitely it does affect the lower to middle income. We are seeing those especially who have a lack of financial inclusion with a very stressful full time because they don't have access to those formal banking processes we all kind of get used to in our lives. But it's not only through our study. FNB released a study last week showing that middle income earners are suffering similar ilks, whereby they're spending, around 80% of their salary within the first 5 days of the month. So it's not just the lower income segment which is struggling at the moment.
Yeah, what is interesting is that you found that this financial stress actually has an impediment on cognitive functioning. That's interesting. Unpack that for us and perhaps tell us a bit more about whether or not there's any particular industry that's worse affected by this.
It's not any specific industry. Generally, it's just people who are finding life difficult. So this financial stress manifests itself in a number of ways. So what we found through the study was people who aren't under financial stress struggle to concentrate. Really important in the workplace, especially if you're working in an industry where you need to be at the top of your game in order to perform your functions. We tend to be in a bad mood. Stress brings on that kind of moodiness within how we interact with our colleagues, how we interact with our families. We tend to end up with problems sleeping. That continual worry just goes into our sleep patterns. We don't get a great night's sleep. We wake up feeling worse. And then we have problems eating. And so all of that, when you take all of that into consideration, really is putting us in a place that when we arrive at work, if we arrive at work, we're not in the best shape in order to perform our duties.
Yeah, the study itself was conducted with the aim, in part, of ascertaining the state of employee well-being in certain sectors. What ultimately became the finding of the study, given the issues we ventilated already?
So I think from people in their work environment, the youth are far more happy with how their employers are treating them as opposed to the older generations. What we are seeing is within the older generations, people that do have more access to financial inclusion, perhaps as you were saying earlier, have a bit more disposable income, are tending to get themselves into a financial position where they're leaning on things like payday lenders, they're leaning on credit cards. The youth, on the other hand, who don't have perhaps a credit score, aren't included in the banking system, are tending to want to borrow money from their employers, asking colleagues, asking friends, so really battling to get to that point of solving their financial needs during the kind of the monthly pay cycle.
Yeah, that stress, as you pointed out, leads to all kinds of other adverse health effects, so to speak. I mean, a lack of sleep is what you pointed out, a lack of concentration in the workplace. These things pile up, and I wonder to what extent it ultimately leads to people just not showing up for work.
Yeah, that's great insight. So what happens when we tend to run out of money? We tend not to always be able to afford to get to work, or we tend to, be trying to run a second job. Those effects that we were talking about, sleep deprivation, not eating well, tend to lead to sickness. So we're more inclined to take sick leave, more inclined to go to the doctor. And so all of this is building towards a lack of productivity within the employer workforce, because we're taking so much time away from the job. And then, of course, should we arrive at work, as we discussed earlier, there's that continual pressure around, how do I get home today? How do I put food on the table? And so all leading to a lack of productivity within the workplace.
All very interesting indeed, especially as we try to find solutions to our many economic woes. Thanks very much indeed for providing your insights to that discussion. Simon Ward is the CEO and founder of fintech startup Floatpays. Live to us there from Cape Town. Once again, Simon, thanks very much indeed.